Congratulations, you've just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and founder of The Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, amazing, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. All right, folks, buckle up. We got a fun one today. If you've ever been told, hey, your cholesterol looks normal, nothing to worry about. Or conversely, hey, your cholesterol is looking a little high, let's get you on some statins. Then today's episode might just change your life. Because here's the truth. A huge percentage of people who suffer heart attacks were told their numbers were quote unquote fine. And for those of us over 50 who want to stay strong and active and fully engaged in life, that's a risk we simply can't afford to ignore. So today we're diving into why quote-unquote normal cholesterol doesn't always mean a healthy heart, what's actually happening inside your arteries long before symptoms show up, and how modern medicine can help us see heart disease decades before it becomes deadly. My guest today is Dr. John Osborne. He is one of fewer than 50 physicians in the United States who is triple board certified in cardiology, hypertension, and lipidology. He's Harvard trained, he's nationally recognized in preventative medicine, and he has personally interpreted over 25,000 advanced heart scans, proving that heart disease is predictable, preventable, and very often reversible. Dr. Osborne is also the co-founder of Clear Cardio, where he's leading a national effort to stop preventable heart attacks before they ever happen by finding plaque early and changing the game from reaction to prevention. So if you are over 50, feel pretty good, but you want to stay lean, strong, and vital for decades to come, this is an episode you need to hear. So whip up your protein smoothie and let's meet Dr. Osborne.
So I was fourth, fifth grade. My dad was a pilot in the Air Force, retired Air Force, by the way. And so my first plan A for my life was to be a fighter pilot. So fourth, fifth grade, I found out how to wear glasses. I knew that was not going to be a successful pathway. So then my mom was a nurse. So then I said, I think I'll go the medicine route. And so started really young. And that really was the path ever since then.
Is that right?
I went to medical school and I was so intent on going to medical school. That's where I wanted to go, right? Undergrad, all that stuff you got to go through was just kind of a barrier. So I found a program, this is a number of years ago now, back in the 80s, where you could apply to Penn State, where I grew up, and go to Penn State for a year. And if you did well, then you could go to medical school the next year. So it was a 5-year undergrad MD program. So that's what I did. So kind of skipped out 3 years and saved a lot of time, money, and all that. And then when I got to medical school in Philly, I was 19. I couldn't drink. Most everybody else there could, obviously, in the medical school class. So I thought maybe I'll do some research, talk to my mentors. And they said, well, if you're going to do some research, get into our MD PhD program. That way you'll get 2 pieces of paper during medical school. And I said, oh, that's brilliant. So I did that. And so by age 26, I'd done my undergrad, my MD, and my PhD, and then went up to Boston and Harvard, where I did the rest of my internal medicine and cardiology training. So.
Right on. And I was poking around on your website here preparing for this interview, and you've got quite the papers, as you say, right? So quite the pedigree to talk about what we're going to talk about.
I have a lot of expensive wallpaper I like to put.
You have a lot of expensive wallpaper. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, that makes you qualified to be our guy to talk about this. So obviously always interested here in medicine. You knew that was the path. It sounds like you excelled at it, fast-tracked it. You got a lot of certifications here. Why cardio health? How did you become an expert in this area?
Yeah, so I went to Harvard at Brigham and Women's Hospital, where I did all my training, which arguably I'm going to say is the best. It's an arguable point, but it's the best place to train and do cardiology, because that's where I wanted to go. In fact, when I started my whole pathway, even in medical school, I said, I want to go to the Brigham, right? It's like Babe Ruth pointing out, I'm going to put the ball back there, right? So that's, so as it turns out, I was able to get there, did my training there. And remember, this is back in the 90s. So we had fairly limited tools for diagnosis, right? We had stress tests, which we still do today, and lots of different kinds of stress tests. And we had the heart cath, right? Which a lot of my colleagues would say is the gold standard, right? So we put tubes or catheters up in your heart, inject dye, blah, 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 right? Invasive, expensive, risk of complications. And in fact, when we did heart caths, the technology was uh, it was actually filmed on 35 millimeter film, not digital.
Hmm.
It's out now, right? But
Yeah.
you would actually
Yeah.
take the pictures, run the film, develop the film, and then we could actually review the film on these little devices that showed us films. So what was interesting is at the Brigham at Harvard, we get people coming from all over the place, right? Different countries, all the different states, and they come in and they get their heart cath done, right? Because they were worried they had heart disease or blockages. So we do the heart cath, and we go, it looks fine, right? Well, as I was looking at it, I go, well, there's some little lumpy, bumpy stuff there, right? It's not completely smooth, right? It's got some lumpy, bumpy stuff, but we call it normal. Go home. It's all good. No problems. But that kind of stuck with me. I'm going, I think that lumpy, bumpy stuff that we're seeing is important. Well, as it turns out, critically important. So that really was my genesis back in the mid 90s of wait a minute, plaque is something that starts decades before we have symptoms, chest pain, angina, flunk a stress test. Shouldn't we be detecting it early? And that's kind of where I came up with the concept of, shouldn't we be thinking about, is there a way to do what I call, and you may laugh at this, you know, I make the analogy to colonoscopies, right? Everybody gets this, right? Everybody gets to be
Yep.
screened. We don't want anybody getting cancer. The whole purpose of a screening colonoscopy is find the polyp, take care of the polyp if you have them, and we don't get cancer. Everybody gets that, right? We screen everybody. But that then raised the question in my head, is there a cardiac colonoscopy? Is there a tool? Is there a way to visualize early plaque long before it causes blockages, long before we have symptoms, chest pain, angina, long before we have or flunk a stress test? Can we detect this, the polyp version of plaque, literally years before we get in trouble? So that was really my light bulb that went on 30 years ago. So I started out as we called it back then, we call it non-invasive cardiologist, right? So I didn't do stents. That was my interest. I was on the preventative side. So we did stress testing, echocardiography, ultrasounds, nuclear cardiology. So all of those non-invasive tests to try to figure out what's going on. And so we were called the non-invasive guys, right? Now I found out about 15, 20 years ago, I was actually a preventative cardiologist. I just didn't know what to call myself. So then we evolved that into preventative cardiology, which basically uses imaging, which we'll talk about. What is the state of the art of that imaging to do essentially what I like to call the cardiac colonoscopy to find the early plaque long before we get in trouble. And I would argue, I'm gonna be a little controversial here, Kevin. If you think of heart disease like cancer, right, with that analogy, I would argue in the world of cardiology, in the world of atherosclerosis or plaque, I will argue we really, really understand it well. There's always stuff to learn, but we really, really understand it well. What causes it, what contributes to it, how to fix it. And we have an incredible array of proven therapies that stop, and not just stop, but reverse plaque, right?
Hmm.
Those are here today. Our problem, if you think of this as cancer, is I'm going to say we have the cure for cancer, but we're not looking for it. We're waiting till it
Hmm.
shows up as a symptom, as a
Yeah.
chest pain, as a stroke, as an abnormal stress test, where that's never early detection. That is really, really late detection. And that's kind of
Yeah. By then
cardiac.
the damage is done and we're reacting
We're
as opposed to being
reacting. That
preventive.
at that point, the disease is so far advanced that we probably need stents and balloons and surgery and all the mechanical things that if we'd found it earlier and treated it medically with diet, exercise, lifestyle, not smoking, of course, we have a ton of medicines, tools to affect plaque as well, then heart diseases we don't, which includes stroke as well, right? You get a blockage in the heart, we call it a heart attack. If it's in the
Hmm.
neck, it's a stroke. So it's really the same disease. It's plaque. But if we applied this and started doing this on a routine basis, heart disease as we know it, strokes and heart attacks, balloons, stents, bypass surgery, catastrophic cardiovascular events that seemingly come out of nowhere, although the plaque has been there for decades beforehand, just not causing symptoms, that heart disease, strokes, all the things that come from that, heart failure, cardiovascular death, sudden death, all those things could be eliminated.
Hmm. Yeah, I love this analogy to colonoscopies or even breast cancer screening,
Exactly,
right? So
right?
we have
We're,
these
we're
very these
really
preventative
smart in
things.
the world of cancer, right? We do. Colonoscopies, pap smears, mammograms,
Yeah.
right? We now do low dose
Yep.
CT in smokers to identify early lung cancer with a proven mortality benefit. Cancer kills hundreds of thousands of people in the US. However, heart disease, strokes, and heart attacks
Yeah.
kill more people than the next 7 causes of death combined. And what are
Right.
we doing to
Yeah.
find it early? Nothing.
Interesting. All right. So I want to put a pin in the technology piece of this because we're going to come back and pull this all apart, the preventative piece and the imaging, all that. But let's just back up a little bit because you just mentioned, I think most of my audience probably has heard by now that heart attacks are what the leading
Yeah.
cause of death
And
worldwide and certainly here in the United
worldwide,
States, right?
roughly about a million or so in the US every year, year in, year out. In fact, the only thing that killed more people over COVID was heart disease, right? Its
Mm-hmm.
title as the most common cause of checking out of this mortal coil. And worldwide, again, leading cause of death, 20 million people every year, year in, year out, will die of preventable strokes and heart attacks.
Strokes and heart attacks. Okay. So let's start here before we dig into the fun stuff, the nerdy stuff, I'm going to call it. What lifestyle, or let me back up. Why are so many of us why are a million of us dying of a heart attack and a whole bunch of us are building up plaque without knowing it? What are the main causes of stroke and
Yep.
heart attacks?
So kind of 4 big modifiable factors, right? I'm going to tell you a secret. The major contributor to heart disease that no one ever talks about is, as I call it, birthdays. It's age. But that's
Okay.
not
Yeah.
modifiable. I can't
Right.
fix that. So I'm going to focus on the things I
Right.
can fix. And as you'll see as I walk through these, very simple, straightforward. A lot of these, this is where you come in, right? This is good choices, diet, exercise, being height weight proportionate, not using tobacco, all of those things can dramatically change your trajectory towards plaque, strokes, and heart attacks, right? So the big 4 factors, and there is overlap obviously between all these, right? We have tobacco use, right? And I say tobacco broadly and generally, it's not just smoking, it's the nicotine. So if you vape,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it that there
Yeah.
is no safe form of nicotine, right? So
Right.
as I like to say, I don't care whether you smoke it, chew it, snort it, inject it, rub it on your skin, use it as a colonic, you're getting nicotine in your body. It literally turns your vessels from Teflon into Velcro. One does not want sticky vessels, and that's a beautiful way to accelerate or cause the deposition of plaque in your blood vessels. Okay. The other
Okay.
two, so obviously tobacco, just please don't go there. Okay. If you
Right.
do, seek help, work it. Because, in fact, I'll tell you, if you quit smoking, now most of the day we have is smoking. So I'll say smoking. But again, I'll say generically tobacco. But if you quit smoking, wonderful data, in 1 year, simply by quitting smoking, right? Doing nothing else, you will lower your risk of a stroke or heart attack by 50%. So that's 50% off
Yeah.
in a year
Yeah.
by simply not doing
Yeah.
that. So there you go. Now, hopefully, I expect many in your
I've got to go out on a limb here and say most of my folks listening here, tuning in, are
probably
not
don't.
smokers. But there you go. I mean, another way to say that though is smoking will increase your chances of dying of a heart attack by 50%. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
absolutely. So it's a major risk
Yeah.
factor, right?
Sure. Yes. That's a
Hopefully,
big
no.
one.
But it is surprising though. People say, "Well, I just chew, it's fine," or "I just
Mm-hmm.
do vapes, it's fine." No, no.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
literally the lining
Not
of the
fine.
vessel, the endothelium as we call it, literally has nicotine receptors. When those receptors get stimulated, it starts a whole genetic cascade that turns your vessels from Teflon, or as my partner says, a slip and slide, into Velcro. We do not want sticky Velcro.
Not a
That's
good
one way.
situation.
Smoking,
Okay.
we beat that horse. The other big things, and this is particularly where diet, exercise, lifestyle is dramatically effective: high blood pressure and diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
both of which ultimately cause you to have sticky vessels, right? As far as high blood pressure, strikingly, let me give you a few striking statistics that I think are your audience can determine. High blood pressure affects half of U.S. adults. So and I'm talking anybody over
Wow.
18 has high blood pressure. Okay.
Hmm.
Many do not know it. It is the silent killer. So your blood pressure could be high. You feel fine. You have to measure it. It is terribly underdiagnosed. Even those that are diagnosed, it is not well treated. And even those that are diagnosed and treated, only 20% actually have good control of their blood pressure. So it is a massive public health issue. And frankly, even if you're height weight proportionate, you work out every day, do all the good stuff that you've been, talking about, encouraging, motivating, all that stuff, great to prevent high blood pressure, great if you have it to lower it. However, a lot of blood pressure happens to do with genetics, DNA ancestry, who your parents were, okay? Or as I like to say to many of my patients, right, who do all the right stuff, who follow the Kevin protocol, I say, the problem is, my friend, you chose the wrong ancestors. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But if you don't want to get high blood pressure, or if you have it and want to treat it non-pharmacologically, again, the Kevin pathway, right? It's fantastic. It's
Sure.
highly successful. However, sometimes genetics catch up with you. The other thing is birthdays, right? From the age of 40 onwards, and Kevin, one of these days you'll hit 40. From the age of 40 onwards, the lifetime risk of developing high blood pressure in the US is 90%.
Say that again.
From the age of 40 onwards, the lifetime risk
Yeah.
of developing high blood pressure in the US is 90%.
Wow.
90, not 19, 90.
Wow.
Okay.
90. So look, I'm 60. I've got great blood pressure. I'm beating the
Yeah.
odds.
You're
Fair.
in the
Yeah.
10%.
Okay.
You're already in the 10%. God bless.
I'm in the 10% club. All right, guys, that's our goal here,
Yeah.
right? I think everybody here should certainly. I had no idea it was that
Yeah.
prevalent. We happen to have one of those little collar
Yeah,
cuff things
right.
my
They're
wife bought
fantastic.
at the drugstore. Yeah, they're not very expensive. You can just
And
do it at
actually,
home. It's
home
really
blood
easy to
pressure
test.
monitoring, because one of the pieces of paper, the expensive wallpaper, you can actually get certified in clinical hypertension. No one does. No one pays to do it, but I love it. And it's absolutely critical to preventative cardiology. So it's one of the little things I did in the past, right?
Hmm.
So I'm a huge blood pressure hawk, right? Uh, so home blood pressure monitoring is more accurate. Tell this to your doctor or your provider, is more accurate than what we call seated cuff blood pressure in the office. It's more accurate,
Yeah, I get it.
right?
Yeah, I might be nervous
All
in
of it.
medical
White
environments.
coat,
All of that, right? There could be a number of reasons.
and you're
Yeah.
going to get a lot more numbers at home than the time that we
Hmm.
just check it once in the office, the once
Once a
month
year
here,
for
right?
most of us.
So
Yeah.
home blood
Yeah.
pressure is the secret. It's cheap, it's effective, it's fantastic. It is the best way to measure in a practical way what your blood pressure is, or if you have high blood pressure, are we controlling it adequately? And these monitors, they're slick. They're You can link them to your phone, Bluetooth enabled. They
Yep.
save all the
Yep.
data there. They'll chart it, graph it, do all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's a $70 investment.
Yeah. Well worth it. I had no idea it was that
And,
prevalent.
la-
That.
and lastly, Kevin, I'll say, so big picture, right? If you think about the entire US population, if we eliminated high blood pressure tomorrow via diet, exercise, medication, however we do that, if we just eliminated it tomorrow, we would tack on to everybody's lifespan, just by doing that alone, 3.2 years. Okay.
Wow.
Which is a lot. And to
Mm-hmm.
put that in frame
Mm-hmm.
of reference, women getting mammograms, which they absolutely should, okay? But if you look at the net benefit across the entire population, obviously men don't benefit from that, but if you spread that benefit across everybody, what additional lifespan does that give the average person in the US by doing mammograms for women? It adds 1 month.
Hmm.
Should we get
Yes,
mammograms?
we can make a
Absolutely.
much bigger impact by simply. Yeah.
But
Right.
high
By
blood
by
pressure,
home.
underappreciated, underdiagnosed, silent disease. We don't know we have it unless we measure it generally. And even then is still poorly treated and controlled. So that's my 2 cents on high blood pressure.
Well, thank you for sharing that for us because I think a lot of us learned a bunch right there. Just the shocking prevalence, and then for those of you that don't have a home testing kit, just go get one. Go out to any
Well,
drugstore. They're
I,
pretty. I'm sure they're online,
I
right?
will tell you, I don't know if it's okay, but the device that I recommend, it's great, it's accurate, it's small, it's got a Bluetooth thing. If you're interested, there's a lot of great devices out there, but I like this when people say, "What should I get?" It's called Omron. That's a big manufacturer of these blood pressure devices. Omron, Omron, and they make a device called the Evolve, Evolv, Evolve. 7,000 Evolve blood pressure cuff. Go to Amazon, wherever, or your local, pharmacy, Walmart, whatever. But that's my favorite. But basically, the home blood pressure devices, and there's a ton of them. They're all very quite good. But that's the one. If someone wants my specific recommendation, I love that device. It's great.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that recommendation, folks. I will throw that a link to that. I'll track it down and throw that in the show
Great.
notes. You guys can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on. So yeah, thanks for that. All right, so far we've gotten through tobacco.
So
I think
high blood
we
pressure,
were ready for that one.
diabetes, right?
Yep. Yep. Diabetes
There
and blood
certainly
pressure.
are
Yeah.
genetic influences, right? I run into people, everybody in my family has diabetes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there clearly are genetic influences, but there's a huge amount that lifestyle plays a role, right? Even if there's a
Sure.
really strong family history of diabetes, with the stuff that you recommend and diet and exercise and eating well can dramatically lower that risk. And having
Yep.
diabetes, again, is a terrible disease, not just for the heart, leading cause of blindness, leading cause of dialysis and kidney failure, and of course, a leading contributor and cause to strokes and heart attacks.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
diabetes is a really bad thing. In fact, I'm very, very careful on all my patients to monitor that. And even if they start developing, quote, pre-diabetes, which we can detect before they ever develop diabetes with some very simple markers, right? By the way, blood pressure is one of those markers, right? High
Hmm.
blood pressure precedes diabetes in the vast majority of people. In fact, patients with diabetes, 90% have high blood pressure
High blood pressure. Yeah, that's not
because
surprising.
they
Yeah,
all
I can see
begin
that.
to clump
Sure.
together,
Yep.
right? So being height weight proportionate, exercising, watching the sugars, the starches, the white stuff, the processed foods, right? Really, really
Yep.
very, very beneficial to change that trajectory over the course of our life to prevent diabetes. And along the way, all those things, particularly sodium on the blood pressure side or salt, will really help to lower your risk of developing that or maybe prevent it. Or even if you have it, will make it much easier and better to control. So
Gotcha.
diabetes, big.
Well, hey, yeah. Okay. Thank you. I want to, because you mentioned salt in context of blood pressure. And now that I've got an expert here, I'd love to ask this question because it seems to me like high blood pressure and say the DASH diet or low sodium type
Yep.
diets are often prescribed. And is it the case that, for example, I don't suppose anybody's causing high blood pressure by over putting too much Himalayan rock salt on their grilled chicken breasts and broccoli. I suspect it's because if I'm having a high sodium diet and I'm eating the standard American diet, there's this now all of a sudden, not only am I eating high sodium, but I'm eating a whole bunch of probably ultra processed crap that's not serving me from a health perspective. Is that fair? What is the role? I've often wondered how much is salt per se causative of high blood pressure? Have we pulled all that apart?
It is a very large part of that. Again, there could be other factors and genetic factors and ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as things we can fix, salt plays a very big role. And there's two levels. First of all, 85% of the sodium, the salt, sodium chloride, in our diet is literally already baked in, put into the foods we're eating, particularly if they're
So you mean the
right?
processed foods,
But
right?
that all
Yeah.
includes
Yeah.
baked goods. Baked goods are pretty high in
Mm-hmm.
salt. Even diet soda, by
Yep.
the way, is fairly high, believe it or not, in salt.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, cheese, I love cheese, but cheese tends to be high in salt. But 85% of the food we eat, or the sodium that we get in general, unless you're careful, read labels, etc., 85% is literally are in the food there. 11% is what we add.
Got
Okay.
it.
And interestingly,
Yeah.
meat, right? And this doesn't matter. Poultry, pork, red meat, whatever. All of that is low in sodium. It's what we do
Yep.
to the meat. It's the
Yeah.
processing that we're adding a huge amount of sodium to it. Makes it very yummy, but
Yeah.
particularly,
So you take that turkey and you turn it into sliced deli turkey. Now all of a
oh yeah,
sudden I've done
yeah.
some,
So
yeah, I've done some crazy
one
things from sodium
sub
perspective. Yeah.
sandwich, right? So we should be
Sure.
shooting in general, this is for everybody, below, here's a number, 2,300 milligrams of sodium a day, right? So if you read labels, it'll say, here's your sodium milligrams, whatever you're serving.
Yeah.
So we should shoot for everybody, if you have high blood pressure or want to prevent it, should be below 2,300 milligrams, okay? One sub sandwich has 3,000 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah.
So there you go. So
Yeah.
read labels,
Yeah.
lots of sneaky salt out
Yep.
there. I will tell you, here's a great solution, okay, at home. We've done studies where we replace table salt, which is sodium chloride, with a mixture of what we call low salt. So it's about 75% or so sodium chloride, table salt, your Himalayan salt, basically. And then we replace about 25 to 30% of that with potassium chloride. Potassium lowers blood pressure, sodium raises it. So we've actually done studies with this, very large trials. These are actually out of China, right, where they consume a large amount of sodium, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
we simply replaced the sodium in their homes with low salt, which is potassium chloride and sodium chloride, it both lowered the risk, lowered blood pressure, and translated to a lower risk of stroke and all-cause mortality. And this is a trial about 50,000 people done in China. One village randomized to that approach, the other village not, and then followed out over several years. So even simple stuff like that, the low salt stuff, which you can buy on Amazon
Yeah.
or at your grocery store, can be a really effective, helpful tool to help mitigate that blood pressure. The other thing is, so there's sodium, but the more carbs we eat, the more simple carbs, right? The sugars, the simple starches, the processed foods, causes us to make more insulin. Insulin causes us to pull in more sodium. So whatever sodium you're taking in, as your insulin levels rise, and I'm sure you have explored this thoroughly, as your insulin levels rise, your body literally pulls in more sodium. It doesn't pee it out in the urine, it pulls more in sodium. So now you're basically, that's how you get high blood pressure. So
Mm-hmm.
sodium, which is the ultimate cause of it, but also a high carb, high simple sugar, high simple starch approach without fiber, without, good protein, good fat, also is another factor that contributes to sodium or salt retention and ultimately translates to the high blood pressure too.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the standard American diet that you're
It
describing there.
is.
That the just those the that the simple carbs and high
Yeah.
sodium ultra
All yummy,
processed foods.
right? All
That's it.
yummy,
All
readily
yummy. Yeah.
accessible, right? Which is
Yes.
why I moved
Yeah.
from Boston, where we're reasonably healthy in Boston, to Texas 28 years ago, because here I'm in the land of, and I'm sorry, my Texas compatriots, but I moved from Boston, which is we do reasonably well there, smoking, diet, exercise, sodium, and all that, to Texas, where we have smoking, barbecue, and no sidewalks. But
Yeah.
they needed me in Texas,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that's why.
right. They needed you down there to help
Exactly.
evangelize.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, Dr. Osborne,
The,
I think we got it. Tobacco, blood pressure,
yep.
diabetes, certainly a very nuanced conversation there as
The
well.
thing.
Moving on.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you, the fourth thing is very special. Asymptomatic, I feel fine, right? The fourth critical factor, modifiable factor, and there's lots of others, but these are the big ones, right? Is
Mhm.
cholesterol. Okay.
Right on. That's where I wanted to go next anyway. So yeah, hit
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
Let's talk about cholesterol. Yeah, because
Cholesterol, right?
can't talk about heart disease without talking about
No,
cholesterol. Yep.
because cholesterol is a little different than the other factors because cholesterol literally is the stuff that gets into our blood vessels that causes the plaque. It literally is at the scene of the crime every time. There is no such thing as plaque in the absence of cholesterol. Okay? However,
Yep.
cholesterol gets pretty complicated. We'll walk through this. We'll make it simple. And here's the thing though. And here's the cholesterol paradox. I just said it is the stuff that ends up in the blood vessels, whether it's in the neck causing stroke, in the heart causing heart attacks, in the legs causing what we call peripheral arterial disease. Every single one of those plaques is a hunk of cholesterol sticking into the wall of the vessel, right?
Yep.
However, I can show you people, here's the cholesterol paradox, who have high cholesterol, high LDL cholesterol, and who have no plaque. So
Okay.
it is necessary,
Interesting.
it is essential, it is mandatory. However, it may not be sufficient. Okay.
Got it. Yep.
Conversely, I can show you lots of people whose cholesterol looks perfect, looks average, or even well below average, who have extensive plaque. So this is the cholesterol paradox. Okay. And here's what's happening. There are really two factors, which you already talked about. Cholesterol is the stuff that ends up in the blood vessel. Okay. But it's going to interact with factors that give you sticky vessels, inflammation, contributed to by tobacco, high blood pressure, diabetes, prediabetes, right? Those
Yep.
factors will give you sticky vessels, right? So you want your vessels to be Teflon, not Velcro. If you smoke, if you have high blood pressure, not controlled, diabetes, prediabetes, not taken care of, those vessels will migrate from Teflon as they should be, where nothing sticks, a slip and slide, they will migrate into Velcro and things stick. That's how you can have
Aha.
average cholesterol levels, right? Because remember, the cholesterol we measure simply measures how much cholesterol is floating through our blood vessels. Tells me
Mm-hmm.
nothing about is it sticking. So that's how you can have average, even below average cholesterol, but in the setting of sticky vessels, you can form plaque all day long. And then the reverse of that, I can show you people with high LDL cholesterol, right? That's really high. Like you need a drug right now, last week, right? High LDL cholesterol, when we actually look at the blood vessels, they don't have plaque because their vessels, because of diet, exercise, good choices, choosing the right ancestors, all those factors, right?
Yeah.
Doing
Yeah.
all the things Kevin would tell you to do, their vessels are so much more like Teflon that even though the cholesterol is high, it bounces off. It doesn't stick. So that
Huh. So is that maybe, would that explain, like, for example, carnivores seems to be a thing now, right? There are people that are very fit, very strong,
yeah,
very athletic in our age demographic that only eat meat. And that seems
right.
crazy. Is that what's maybe happening there?
That's the
I'm guessing their cholesterol is probably through the
that
roof, wouldn't it
and
be?
there's a lot of genetic differences between these individuals, right?
Sure.
Some people do
Fair. Yep.
carnivore, cholesterol's fine. Some people do carnivore, particularly if it's pre-existing high, and it can rocket it through the roof. Now, the
Hmm.
theory, the concept, and there's a lot of research going on. I'm going to say it's not completely settled at all. Okay, it's an area
Sure.
of great interest and
That's fair.
research. I'm very, very fascinated by it as well. But the hypothesis is that we can consume a high-fat diet, particularly saturated fat. That's what drives the cholesterol. By the way, here's another interesting factor. Cholesterol in your diet has nothing to do with the cholesterol that we measure in your blood. The
Huh.
cholesterol in your blood is made by you, it's made by your liver. Okay. Dietary cholesterol,
Yep.
and I'm quoting the guidelines, is, quote, not a nutrient of concern.
Really?
Yes. Yes. Now, saturated fat in some people can drive the LDL, the bad cholesterol, up. But dietary
Mm-hmm.
cholesterol has essentially no impact upon the cholesterol that we measure in your blood. The cholesterol we're measuring in your blood, 85% of that is made by you, is made in your liver, largely as a function of who your mom and dad were.
Okay. So really the determining factor on what I eat and my cholesterol is less than I thought it was. It has more to do with, again, my genes, I
It's a lot more
suppose,
genetic,
genetic.
right?
It's a lot more
And in
genetic. Okay.
fact, if you look at studies, we've done all these over the last several decades, that if you look at diet and exercise, right, doing all the right stuff, we can lower your cholesterol in the range of 5 to 10%. Fairly small,
Hmm.
fairly modest. Now,
Yep.
if you have
Yep.
plaque and we need to stop and reverse it, we're going to need over a 50% reduction. Now, I will take 5 and 10% all day long. And
Sure.
when you see a
Yep.
cardiologist or someone and they're talking about cholesterol and they say, start with diet and exercise, let me tell you the secret. The secret of diet exercise in the setting of high cholesterol is so that you don't develop high blood pressure, you don't develop diabetes, you don't develop sticky vessels.
Makes
Frankly,
sense. Okay.
we
Gotcha.
know
It's that we keep coming back
it's
to these sticky
barely going to move the
vessels,
needle on the
right?
cholesterol, but it's great to help
Gotcha.
prevent sticky vessels, right?
Got it. Got it. Yep. This is start. It's sorry I'm so dense here,
No,
but
no, no, no,
yes,
no. I
now
mean,
I
there's a
do.
huge
This is
amount
all
of
coming full circle here. I see what you're
there's a
saying
huge amount
here.
of
It's
mythology about
there
cholesterol out there.
is. Right.
By the
There
way,
is. Yeah. And look, there's,
another
yeah.
piece of paper on the wall. Uh, I've been a 20-year member of the National Lipid Association. Yes, there's a small group of us. This is what we love. We're lipid nerds. Got board
Lipid
certified
nerds.
in
Yeah.
lipidology, was served on the board for 8 years, all that stuff. So I love lipids, right? And there's a lot of just confusion, misunderstanding, and all that out there. More than we frankly have time to talk about today, just on that topic alone. But I think we got people well up to speed about the reality of cholesterol. So the paradox of cholesterol is every time, if there's a plaque, cholesterol is there. It is the ultimate culprit. Okay. In fact,
Right.
if you do not smoke, don't have diabetes, exercise, do all the right stuff, high blood pressure, don't have high blood pressure, right? If you have plaque, and you certainly absolutely may, this is my real estate analogy, right? It's cholesterol, cholesterol, cholesterol. Anybody that has plaque in the absence of those factors is a cholesterol issue. Even if your cholesterol appears normal, for you, it's too high. Somebody else could have much higher cholesterol and have no plaque. But if you have plaque, in the absence of those big three modifiable factors we talked about, you have a cholesterol issue. And when you get into that, there's LDL, there's ApoB, there's LP little a, there's lots of other species. I won't bore anybody or get too deep in the woods about that. But I will say the main take home is if you have plaque in the absence of all those other modifiable factors we talked about, and you're doing all the right lifestyle stuff, you have a cholesterol issue.
Very interesting. Okay. So that number that I get when I go to my annual physical, because the blood lipid panel's done every time you go, right?
Absolutely,
Especially in this age demographic. We're going to get our total cholesterol. We're going to get our LDL and our HDL.
Triglycerides.
And we have to remember which one's the good one and which one's the quote unquote bad
Right.
one. Now, ApoB is a big thing, right? Because I think, I don't know, Huberman or somebody has been talking about that on podcasts as well. So now that's in our vocabulary. We got to worry about that one as well. But it seems to me that that number and that reference range has a lot less to do with my likelihood of developing heart disease than the fact of whether I've got slidey, which you call them slip and slide vessels, or if I've got the Teflon vessels, right? Yeah. So it's a plaque issue. Yeah. All right. So then in that case, let's go ahead. Let's transition. Let's talk about plaque. So what is plaque? Is plaque just a cholesterol molecule? And I know you talk about the difference between hard and soft plaque. Let's do a plaque 101
Plaque
here.
101. So plaque is what causes heart attacks and strokes. It is the stuff that forms in our blood vessels. And here's a couple things about it. When plaque starts, think of a donut. Okay. If you're in New York, we'll say a bagel. Okay. But think of a donut, and we have a donut hole, and we got the donut or the bagel itself, right? Plaque always begins and starts in the wall of the vessel, in the donut itself. And what will occur over years to decades, which in some ways is good, some ways is bad, is it's good in the sense that when plaque starts forming, developing, which is the deposition of cholesterol, the cholesterol comes out of the bloodstream, enters into the blood vessel wall, particularly if the vessels are sticky, tobacco, diabetes, high blood pressure, right?
Yep.
There are other factors too, but I'll keep it simple. It'll start in the wall of the vessel, and what will happen is the donut will literally go outwards. So there is no impact upon the channel, the lumen, that's where the blood flows. All of this is occurring in the wall of the vessel, and the vessel now turns into a warehouse for cholesterol. It doesn't say anything, doesn't notify you, doesn't give you any symptoms, but it's saying, okay, I got too much cholesterol for me, which again, your cholesterol could be high, average, below average. None of that tells you, is it forming? Is that process begun? So the good news is it grows outwards, right? Doesn't notify you, doesn't cause symptoms, doesn't grow inwards, and it will do that literally for years to decades. In fact, the whole donut, if you think of the wall of the vessel, literally the vessel itself can literally double in size as all of that cholesterol is being warehoused in the wall of the vessel before it ever begins to grow inward. Now, in a sense, that's good. We're delaying the inevitable. The bad news is the process starts 20, 30 years before we ever have symptoms, chest pain, angina, flunk, or stress test, right? So if we wait till we have a blockage, and by the way, our vessels are bigger than they need to be. We have tremendous reserve, right? We can afford up to about a 70% blockage in the vessel before it restricts blood flow. So we have lots of reserve, which is great. The bad news is
That is
by
great.
the
Yep.
time we start having symptoms, chest pain, angina, let alone have a heart attack or stroke or flunk a stress test, we don't have a little plaque. We have extensive
Yeah.
plaque that literally has been there
Yeah.
for decades, growing, festering, without symptoms, without any knowledge of it. So, getting back to that issue I said, I like to say, if you think about the knowledge of the disease of plaque, the tools we have to treat plaque and proven tools, not just do they lower cholesterol or lower blood pressure, but yeah, these things have been shown to ultimately reduce what we want to, which is balloon stents, bypass surgery, heart attack, strokes, cardiovascular death, those things, right? So we have an incredible array of tools, multiple dimensions of tools, multimodality of tools that stop and arrest plaque. Our problem is as I like to say, we have a cure. We've had the cure for cancer. It is true. I'm not wearing a tin hat. We have the cure for cancer. Our problem is we're not looking for it. We're not doing the analysis.
We're not doing that early
We're
screening.
not doing the
Right.
screening,
Yeah.
right? That
We're not
is
doing the
our
screening.
major
Yeah.
problem because it literally will show up decades and can be seen and visualized and detected decades before we get in trouble, but we're not doing it. Unlike what we do in the world
Gotcha.
of cancer.
So for an example, a 40-year-old, if they were screened for plaque, regardless of what the numbers they got
Right.
back on
Yeah.
their annual
Your cholesterol numbers,
physical set on their
pretty
blood
much
cups,
useless.
does
Pretty much useless.
right. But we could do a screening and we could tell whether they are at risk for a heart attack at 50 or
We
60
can detect.
by what we're seeing there. And you're saying we have the tools then to not just arrest, but to reverse
Absolutely.
that plaque at that point?
So
We do.
I'm going to
Okay.
say, I'm
Yeah.
just
We're
bring
just
this
not
out and
catching it.
say we have the cure for
Yeah.
heart disease. We're just
Right.
not finding it early. We wait until the machine breaks. No preventive maintenance, no changing the oil, right? We just wait till it breaks and then we go, oh my gosh, the
Right.
machine broke after 50 years. Hopefully it's not permanently broken, right? And then we stent you and bypass you and do balloons and all those mechanical things because we have now such extensive disease that has been developing over decades. And then we apply all the tools and drugs. Of course, given the foundation of all this is to prevent the first, or
Mm-hmm.
if you have it, the diet, the exercise, all of those good things
Sure.
that uh, proselytize. We wait until the machine's broken. Then we say, oh my gosh, it broke. Who'd have thunk? Right? Hopefully you survive that.
Right.
Half of men, two-thirds of women, the first symptom of heart disease, plaque, is you die. So historically, we've
Oof.
actually
Yeah.
sacrificed half the men, two-thirds of women, from a disease that's been there for decades that we never detected. Their first symptom is they get a toe tag. The survivors, the lucky half of men, the lucky one-third of women, then they get stents and balloons and bypass surgery because they have extensive disease. Then we say, oh, well, let's take care of your blood pressure. Let's treat your diabetes. Let's treat, and I'm talking drugs, right? Treat your diabetes,
Right.
your blood pressure, your cholesterol, which is great, but we should have done that a few decades earlier after we detected that, yes, you have polyps, to use that analogy. Let's take care of the
Mm-hmm.
polyps. And unlike my GI colleagues, right, if they find polyps, they do not have drugs to stop or reverse polyps. In my world of plaque or atherosclerosis, we have pharmacologic Drano, but we're only applying it after the event, which is crazy. We do that for
Yeah.
cancer.
It is
Why do we
crazy.
do it for heart disease, which is the leading cause of death in the US and worldwide?
All right, so let's talk about why. Why I'm assuming that we have technology
Yes, we
then
do.
that can script. I
Yes, we
figured
do.
we were going there.
Yep.
Yeah, we that technology exists. However, when I guess probably when I turned 50, my doctor said, "Hey, happy birthday! Here's your
Yeah,
colonoscopy
Yahoo!
prescription.
Right. I
Go
was
get
looking
this
forward
done."
to this.
Yeah,
Happy
great, right?
birthday.
But he did not hand me anything like, "Hey, let's go get those arteries.
Checked
Let's
out.
go get that plaque checked, Kevin." It just doesn't happen. Why do you think that is?
Several things. One, sort of medicine is very, very conservative. It changes very slowly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, aspirin, right? Prevent heart attacks to save lives, right? We did those studies in the early 80s before aspirin was widely, broadly recommended and used, right? With a drug that has no barriers, over the counter, safe, well tolerated, highly effective, with a drug that has no barriers to access. It took 17 years.
Hmm.
So we move very, very slowly in cardiology, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one is organizational, institutional apathy and inertia. Part of it is training. When I trained in the 90s, we learned stress test and heart cast and all that stuff. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stick my neck way out, right? I'm willing to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and the criticism of my colleagues. Stress tests and heart caths are 20th century technologies.
Sure.
I stopped
Yep. I'm
doing them
with you.
20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
We have better
Yeah.
tools,
They have better tools.
far better tools, right?
Hmm.
The other thing is, to be honest, stress tests, the revenue is very, very good. The heart cath, the diagnostic heart cath, we do 2.5 million of those every year in the US, generate tremendous revenue. Okay. Why do you
Sure.
think your hospital built a new building, a new heart hospital? Yeah.
Because it's a cash center.
It's
Yeah.
not to
There's.
prevent disease, it's because they're detecting it late. $20 for
Hmm.
heart cath, 50 to 70 for stents, 150, 200 for bypass surgery. So if you're not an MD, but a CFO, what industry do you want to invest in? Prevention.
Yeah. There's an ugly financial reality the way that our
Uh,
whole
and then also
medical
too,
pharma system is
when
set
I
up. Yeah.
trained 30 years ago, and older cardiologists, we learned about stress testing heart caths, and most of my colleagues, that's what they do because that's where they're trained. When I came out of my
Sure.
training, cardiac CT, which we'll talk about, which is the magic tool, wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even a glimmer in somebody's eye, right? Only roughly about 2000, 2001, did we begin to use very early crude machines that began to show us plaque before you ever had symptoms, before you had a heart attack. Those machines, like your iPhone, have evolved from the rotary phone to the touch phone to the iPhone 1 to the iPhone 17, as you can imagine, over the last 25 years. So, but to do that, I had to self train, right? There was no training. There was no, no one taught me because it didn't exist in the 90s. So I had to self train. So for me, if I can do something better that gives me better outcomes for my patients, it's done. I'm going to do it, right? But a lot of my colleagues, admittedly, they go, well, this is what I learned. They taught me how to screw the nut on the bolt. I'll do that for 20 or 30 years, and then I'll retire. If there's new stuff that comes out or technology, well, I don't know. That's good. Maybe the youngsters will pick that up. But this is what I do, right? So it's a
Right. It's been
all
working for
those,
me. Yeah.
and frankly, the money certainly hasn't been a factor that broke through that glass ceiling either. Right.
Hmm.
And heart
Yeah.
disease
Okay.
is really pretty cheap in the big picture. To treat heart disease, that's where the money is. Okay. The
That's
Willie
where the
Sutton
money is.
rule.
Yeah.
Why do you rob the bank, Willie Sutton? Because that's where the money is.
That's where the money is. Yeah, that's right. You're saying treat heart disease, but I mean we're not really. We're managing it, right? And
When,
it's
when it's
like you said. I
when it's in the if you think of oncology, our current tools, stress test heart caths, can really only detect disease when it's stage 4. If you would think about this, or
Yeah,
widely
yeah.
metastatic, advanced, whatever,
It's not picking up
impossible to
that
detect
plaque build up. Yeah.
plaque, cancer of the coronaries, I like to say, in stage 3, 2, or 1, unless you use imaging technology that I've been using for 25 years.
Hmm. Okay. So this technology exists. If I'm interested right now, hey, I'm curious
Yeah.
about my plaque. What would I do? Can I go to my local, obviously not my medac, but
Well,
are
you,
there
you can ask,
places around?
but I'll tell you. So for your audience, right, the magic tool for early detection that detects all of this literally years before you get in trouble can say, oh, okay, I got some, again, your cardiac colonoscopy, as we talked,
Mm-hmm.
colonoscopy, cardiac colonoscopy. And by the way, colonoscopies, the goal is to prevent colon cancer, right? But it's invasive, expensive, day or life, general anesthesia, 0.1% chance they perforate your colon, which is great, and we should do it, right? In fact, we went from 50, now it's 45, it'll probably be 40 for everybody to get screening for colonoscopy. Colon cancer kills 2 to 3% of Americans. Cardiovascular disease, strokes, and heart attacks kills about 40% of us. And what do we
Mm-hmm.
do to find it early? Cricket.
Nothing. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the real best tool out there right now is cardiac CTA or CCTA, cardiac CTA, coupled and we've been doing this for a long time. This is not a new technology. I've been doing it for 25 years. Okay. I was one of the very first early guys to do it. When they started doing it, they're going, "What the heck is this?" Right? Well, yeah, guess what? Now people are beginning to jump on board, which is great, and replace heart caths and stress tests and all that. So cardiac CT, but the big advance, what I call cardiac CT 2.0, is taking that cardiac CT data done with a CAT scanner, by the way, not an MRI, but a CAT scanner, literally with the newest machines that we use. The scan itself literally takes a fraction of a second. Okay. Basically,
Okay.
you put an IV
Yeah.
in your arm, that's it. Okay. It's cardiac CT, but now coupled with, as you can imagine, AI. The
Sure.
AI literally can see plaque that we cannot see with our eyes and will quantify it very precisely down to a tenth of a cubic millimeter, which is almost an infinitesimal volume. And for the first time ever, we can now track plaque. So not only are we exercising, not smoking, we're losing weight, our cholesterol's better, whatever, blood pressure's great, but we can now say for the first time ever, we can say, here's how much plaque we had in 2022. Here's how much plaque we have in 25. Is it getting better? Is it the same? Is it improving? That was impossible to do until we had the combination of cardiac CT and now AI. Now we have an amazing machine. So our machine, by the way, is a 640 slice machine. Really very, very cool. I started out 20 years ago with a 64 slice machine. iPhone 1, iPhone 17, 640 slice machine. Our particular machine, and I don't know if I should say who it is, but anyway, it's a phenomenal machine. We were the very first installation of this machine in North America. There's now 8 in the US. So it's a really phenomenal machine. But other machines, which are not as slick as ours, not as low radiation and all that, but can do cardiac CT. We just have the Ferrari of those machines. But there's lots of
Gotcha.
Tauruses and
Yeah.
Camrys out there. Okay, they're fine. But the other thing to do is now couple that data, get the scan, upload to the cloud, and then do the AI analysis. It is absolutely amazing, right? That is the state of the art as far as early diagnosis for heart disease. And the AI tool we use is something called Clearly, Cleerly. Amazing. So it's really the coupling of cardiac CT, simple non-invasive test, fairly inexpensive, a tenth of the cost of a heart cath, by the way, of which we still do 2.5 million in the US. I stopped doing them 20 years ago. By the way, we do 10 million nuclear stress tests a year, which only detect severe advanced disease. We'll miss severe advanced disease 25 to 40% of the time. That's a false negative. And then we'll be inaccurate and call it present when it's not, which then would buy you your heart cath for another $20,000. We'd go through that process over weeks to months. And then, you're freaking out. Do I need stents, bypass surgery? I'm going to keel over dead. They go through the process because the stress tests look funky. You then get a cath and it's fine. So we don't do that anymore. So
You don't do that
if you
anymore.
refer
Yeah.
to the cardiologist, I'll make it very simple. If you get referred to a cardiologist and they say, oh, let's start with an EKG, a stress test, whatever, I'm going to be very honest, run. That's 20th century technology.
Hmm.
It's so bad. It's so terrible, which is why, although we have made major advances in cardiovascular death from the 60s, which is peak cardiovascular death, year after year after year, the total numbers of cardiovascular deaths fell over that period of time till 2011. The bad news in 2011, we're getting grayer, which we will, and unfortunately fluffier, right? Since 2011,
Hmm.
the instance of heart disease deaths actually reversed and started going back up.
Started going back up.
And we're
Yeah.
still doing 10 million nuclear stress tests a year. Had done nothing to lower that. In fact, the numbers went up starting 15 years ago.
So, as a person who's interested in optimal health and healthy aging, I suppose it's going to be tough for me to go to my general physician and get this test. Am I going outside of the, because I'm finding more and more that those of us that want to live above the means, the current medical system and the insurance system is not our ally. It's not our friend. So is there a way for me to go around the medical system and just go straight to a cardiac CT plus AI
Well, that's what
solution,
we
which
do.
I'm paying out of
Yeah,
pocket? Gotcha.
that's what we do.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, cardiac CT has been around a long time. The AI is the
Hmm.
latest wrinkle, which is amazing.
Yep.
But I will tell you,
Hmm.
in as far as the American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, As of October of 21, okay, now I started doing it 25 years ago, but as of October 21, this tells you how slow we are in early adoption of new technology. If you have symptoms of chest pain, of angina, chest pain, or we think you have heart disease, or maybe shortness of breath, we call that an angina equivalent, right? Now I can't mow the lawn. I could
Hmm.
do it 3 months ago, whatever. But symptoms that might suggest that you have heart disease, cardiac CT, not necessarily with AI, but cardiac CT is what we call a class 1A indication. What that means in real speak is it is the standard of care, right? Anything
Okay.
other than that, like stress testing, is now no longer standard of care. Has it bent the needle
Hmm.
much as far as what we do practically in the world of cardiology? We still do 10 million nuclear stress tests a year and 2.5 million heart caths, alas,
Yeah.
right? But I will tell you,
Yeah.
so it is changing, it is out there. But I think part of this is that uh, your listeners can know what to ask, right? There's the unknown unknowns, right? So if one is worried about heart disease because of symptoms, chest pain, shortness of breath, or just your cholesterol's high, your family history, or whatever, diabetes or blood pressure, the state of the art these days is cardiac CT with AI. Anything other than that is frankly a waste of time and money and terribly inaccurate.
Got it. Now,
There's
I don't
gonna
want
be
to wait until I actually have real chest
exactly
pain though, because by
right,
then, yeah,
right.
right. So what I might want to do is go, hey doc, oh gosh, I've been feeling this tightness in my chest here lately. I don't know what's going on. Is I mean, would that at least get me that
Oh yeah,
referral
absolutely.
and I
Well,
stay
it
inside the
should. It
system?
depends upon who
Okay.
you see. If you're having those
Correct.
symptoms,
Yeah,
you
it's
go
a highly
see your
variable.
local
Yeah.
cardiologist and say, "Well, let's start with a stress test." I'm going to be honest.
And
Please,
as a consumer,
please.
can I just say no, I don't want
Absolutely, you
that?
can. Because I see it.
Right
There will
on.
be people
Okay.
in your community, right, who are
Mm-hmm.
using cardiac CT. Now, they should be using AI with it. If you want
Yep.
more details, obviously, this is what we do. I'm a preventative cardiologist. I've been doing this for 30 years. The nice thing is, everybody else, the rest of the herd, is now finally catching up with me, which is good. We still have lots of
Mm-hmm.
opportunities there, but they're catching up with me. If you want more information about the tools we use, the state of the art, cardiac CT, AI, pictures, all that kind of crap, go to our website, clearcardio.com. That's just CLEAR, cardio, CARDIO, clearcardio.com. We also are on YouTube. We have a channel, Power Prevention, clearcardio.com. Just go YouTube, Clear Cardio. You'll see all our videos and stuff. So I think those are great instructional videos. Now, I'm not soliciting anybody. I'm not going to sell anything. But I'm telling you, if you want some more information about what is really the state of the art of both detection. We talked a little bit about prevention, but we have an incredible array of tools there. Uh, there's some resources that you can check and get educated, or as we say in Texas, edumacated about how do we detect heart disease before we get in trouble.
All right, folks, let's get educated then here. I will throw all of Dr. Osborne's information, that website, the clearcardio.com, the YouTube channel, any other social channels. I'll put all that in the show notes. You guys can find that in whatever app you're listening to this on. Of course, you can hit us up on our website as well. But Dr. Osborne, I want to thank you so much for coming on, taking the time to share this enlightening information with us. I want to go out on a limb here and say we all learned a lot today, even those of us that maybe are considered ahead of the curve when it comes to just preventative health, etc. So, man, thanks so much for the work you're doing, and I just encourage you to keep up the great work.
Well, thanks for getting the message out. Thanks for having me, Kevin. And when I always finish up with anybody, right? I always say two things. One, my ultimate goal is to eliminate heart disease, right? And I need everyone to help me to do that. There are 33,000 cardiologists. There's 600 preventative cardiologists in the U.S. And by
Hmm.
the way, no one who has my pedigree and expensive wallpaper. Again, not that that matters, but this is what I have dedicated my life and profession to and my passion. So, A, help me eliminate heart disease. I can't do it alone. Please spread the word. So, thank you for letting me spread the word today and et cetera. And ultimately, I'm going to ask you, Kevin, please work to put me out of business. Okay?
Yeah, amen. Let's go,
Put me out of
folks. You heard
business. Okay? I'll find
it.
something
Let's
else to
do
do.
it. We're going to put
In
them
the
out of
meantime,
business.
put me out of
All
business.
right.
Let's eliminate heart disease, and what I do is irrelevant, and that'll be great.
That would be great. Be perfect for retirement, right?
Precisely.
Okay, Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you are interested in learning how the Silver Edge Collective program can help you feel lean, strong, and confident again, you can find a link to learn more in the show notes for this episode. You guys can find that on whatever app you are listening to this on, or head over to silveredgefitness.com/403. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to... The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to please click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.